At 8:52 on a Monday morning, in front of a glass office tower in downtown Chicago, a woman Maya had never seen before grabbed her by the coat, screamed a name into her face, and slapped her so hard her earring hit the pavement. 200 coworkers watched from the lobby. 40 of them filmed it. By lunch, the video had 1 million views and a caption calling Maya a homewrecker. By dinner, her company had suspended her mother had seen it, and strangers were flooding her inbox telling her to disappear. Here's what none of those million viewers knew. Maya had no idea the man she loved was married. For 2 years, he had built her a boyfriend out of thin air, and she had checked. She had actually checked and found nothing because he was that good. This is the story of two women destroyed by the same lie and what happened when they stopped screaming at each other and started comparing notes. And I'll warn you now, the slap is not the worst thing that happens in this story. Not even close. 2 years before the slap, Maya Torres was 29 years old and had a 5-year plan taped inside her closet door. She worked in marketing at a logistics company in Chicago, one of those massive corporate towers where you can work for a decade and never learn the names of the people 2 floors up. She was good at her job. Careful. The kind of person who read contracts twice and returned shopping carts in the rain. Her friends teased her that she vetted dates like a loan officer, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Maya had watched her older sister marry a charming liar at 23 and spend 7 years digging herself out. So Maya had rules. Meet the friends, meet the family, no mysteries. If a man's life had locked doors in it, she walked. Remember those rules. Because you're about to watch a professional take them apart one by one. His name was Daniel Reed. He was 38, a regional sales director who had transferred to the Chicago office that spring. And the first thing anyone noticed about Daniel was that he made you feel like the only person in the building. Not fake charm, not the loud kind, the quiet kind. He remembered that your dog had surgery. He remembered how you took your coffee. When Maya got publicly steamrolled in a quarterly meeting by a vice president who wanted a scapegoat, it was Daniel who spoke up, calmly, with data, and took the hit himself. She thanked him at the elevator afterward. He said, "You were right, and he knew it. That's all." And then he didn't ask for her number. He just smiled and got off on his floor. That's important. He didn't chase her. He let her come to him. Men like Daniel never chase. They plant something and wait. It took 6 weeks of elevator conversations and 1 work happy hour before they had dinner. And that dinner was, Maya would later admit, the best first date of her life. He asked real questions and listened to the answers. He talked about growing up in a small farm town, 3 hours downstate, about a father who never said "I love you" and a mother he adored. He was funny without being cruel, confident without being loud. And at the end, when she braced for the move, he just walked her to her car and said, "I'd like to do this again. No rush," and left her standing there rewriting everything she thought she knew about men. So she checked him out anyway. Rules are rules. And here's where you need to understand how deep this went, because people watching that slap video would spend weeks saying she must have known. She had to have known. Maya searched him. No Facebook, no Instagram. He told her why on the second date, without her even asking. In sales, he said, clients dig through your life, and after one client stalked his coworker's family, he deleted everything. It was plausible. It was even smart. She looked up his name in county records and found a divorce filing from 9 years earlier, which matched his story exactly. He was divorced, married too young to the wrong person, no kids, thank God, in his words. The divorce was real. It just wasn't the whole record, because the marriage that came after it was filed in another county, 3 hours downstate, under a clerk system that wasn't digitized. Maya couldn't have found it without hiring an investigator. Who hires an investigator for a nice man who buys you flowers on a Tuesday? For a year, Daniel Reed was the best relationship of her life. He met her friends and won them over in one dinner. He met her mother and fixed her garbage disposal without being asked. He kept a toothbrush at Maya's apartment, then a drawer, then half a closet. He talked about their future, a house, kids, in that grounded, unhurried way that made it feel inevitable instead of scary. There was only one locked door in Daniel's life, and he'd built it so beautifully that it looked like a virtue. His mother, he said, had early-stage dementia. She lived alone in his hometown, 3 hours away, refused to move, and refused help from anyone but him. So every weekend, most weekends, Daniel drove downstate to take care of her. He never invited Maya. His mother got agitated by strangers, he explained. And honestly, he didn't want Maya to meet her like this. Confused, frightened, not herself. He wanted them to meet on a good day. He teared up when he said it. Maya held his hand and felt lucky. Look at this man. Look how he shows up for the people he loves. She was holding hands with a man who spent every weekend being someone else's husband, tucking in 2 children who called him daddy, and she was admiring him for it. The lie was that clean, and it held for 2 years, until one Tuesday in October when Maya borrowed his car to pick up a cake and reached under the passenger seat looking for her sunglasses. What she found under that seat was a drawing, a child's drawing, crayon on printer paper, folded into quarters. A stick figure family, a tall man, a woman with yellow hair, 2 small kids, a dog, all holding hands under a fat orange sun. And in the corner, in the careful crooked letters of a 6-year-old, 3 words: I love Daddy. Maya sat in the parking lot of the bakery for 10 minutes, holding that piece of paper, and here's the honest truth about what happened in her head. She explained it away. That's what love does, and if you've never done it, I'm happy for you, but most of us have. Daniel had told her about his sister's kids, a niece and nephew downstate that he saw on his weekend trips. Kids draw their uncles. Kids write daddy on things because kids write everything on everything. She put the drawing back under the seat, bought the cake, and mentioned it to him that night with a laugh. Hey, your niece left you some artwork. And Daniel, without missing a single beat, smiled and said, Oh, that's Lily's. She draws me into the family every time. It breaks my heart a little, honestly. Then he changed the subject so smoothly that Maya ended the conversation feeling closer to him. I want to stop here and say something because this is the part people judge from the outside. The comments under that viral video said she ignored the signs. And yes, there were signs. He was unreachable most weekends. His phone went straight to voicemail. Family time. No screens around Mom. He never posted anything anywhere. He paid for weekend gas in cash, said he was old-fashioned about money. Every single sign had a story attached, and every story was reasonable, and every story had arrived before the question was asked. That's the thing about men like Daniel. Amateurs answer questions. Professionals answer them in advance. But something in Maya had shifted after that drawing, quietly, in a place she didn't fully look at. She started noticing the shape of things. how he took certain calls in the hallway, how there was a second phone once, just once, glimpsed in his gym bag that he said was a work burner for a difficult client, how he got a strange stillness in his face for half a second whenever she suggested gently that maybe she could come along one weekend and wait at a hotel nearby, just to be closer, just in case his mother had a good day. He always had an answer, but now she was counting the answers. In September, she did something she'd never done in her life. Daniel was in the shower, his phone was on the nightstand, and it lit up with a text from a contact saved as Mike HVAC. The preview said, "Did you pay the school fees?" Maya stared at it. School fees. From a heating repair guy. When Daniel came out, she asked casually who Mike was, and Daniel said, "Contractor fixing mom's furnace before winter. Guy texts me nonsense at all hours." And then he kissed her forehead and asked what she wanted for dinner. She let it go. Out loud, she let it go. But that night, she lay awake doing math. 2 years of weekends. The dementia that never seemed to get better or worse. The mother she'd never met, never spoken to, never even seen a current photo of. The niece who drew daddy. The school fees. Now, let me take you 3 hours downstate, because while Maya was lying awake in Chicago, another woman was lying awake too. Her name was Hannah Reed. She was 36. She taught 3rd grade in the small town where she and Daniel had both grown up, and she had been married to him for 8 years. They had 2 kids, Lily, 6, and Cole, 9. In Hannah's version of reality, her husband had a demanding regional job that kept him in Chicago during the week, in a company crash pad shared with other traveling staff, and he came home every weekend, coached Cole's baseball team in the spring, and was, by the standards of their town, a great husband and a wonderful father. Her friends envied her. Her mother adored him. But Hannah had her own pile of small, strange things. A hotel charge in a city he'd never mentioned visiting. The way his phone had 2 of everything, 2 email apps, 2 photo apps, work security, he said. A pair of women's sunglasses in his car that he said belonged to a coworker who'd left them during a client carpool. And in October, the same week as the crayon drawing, Hannah found a receipt in his coat pocket from a Chicago bakery for a birthday cake, with a name on the order slip. Maya. Daniel had a story for that too. Office birthday. He'd picked up the cake as a favor. He said it with mild boredom, the way innocent men talk, and Hannah nodded and put the receipt down and believed him about 80%. But 80% is not 100, and the missing 20 went somewhere and grew. Here's the detail that ends the whole thing, and I love that it's this small. Hannah didn't hire an investigator. She didn't hack his phone. In November, Daniel's company posted photos from a corporate charity gala on its public website. Employee event pages, the one place his no social media rule couldn't reach. Hannah, proud wife, went looking for a picture of her husband in a suit, and she found one. Daniel, laughing, champagne in hand, with his arm around the waist of a woman in a green dress. Not posed the way coworkers pose, settled, familiar, his hand resting on her hip like it had lived there for years. The caption listed names, and the name over the woman in the green dress said, Maya Torres. Hannah did not sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table while her children slept upstairs, and she searched Maya Torres. And unlike her husband, Maya existed everywhere. Public profiles, tagged photos going back 2 years. Maya at a lake weekend, and in the background of one photo, blurry but unmistakable, Daniel's truck. Maya's anniversary post from June. 2 years with this man, with a photo of hands intertwined, and on the man's wrist, the watch Hannah had given Daniel for Christmas. Piece by piece, at her own kitchen table, Hannah Reed excavated her husband's second life. And the thing that broke her wasn't the romance. It was the calendar. She cross-checked the dates. The weekend Maya posted from the lake was the weekend Daniel had missed Cole's championship game for an emergency work summit. The night of the gala photo was the night of Lily's school recital, the one he'd watched on video call from a hotel lobby, misty-eyed, telling Hannah he'd give anything to be there. He hadn't been building one lie. He'd been billing every stolen hour to his own children. Hannah spent 4 days in a fog, functioning, teaching, serving dinner, saying nothing. And on the 5th day, a Monday, she dropped the kids at her mother's, got in her car at 5 in the morning, and drove 3 hours north with a printed photo on the passenger seat and no plan at all except one address she'd pulled from the company website. Not Daniel's crash pad. She didn't want Daniel first. Liars get to rehearse. She wanted the woman in the green dress, face to face, with no warning and nowhere to hide. She parked across from a glass tower in downtown Chicago at 8:40 in the morning, and at 8:52, she saw the green coat. Maya never saw her coming. 1 second, she was walking toward the revolving doors with a coffee in her hand, rehearsing a 9 o'clock presentation in her head. The next, a woman was in front of her, shaking, holding up a printed photograph, and saying, "Do you know who I am?" Maya said, "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong person." And Hannah said the sentence she had driven 3 hours to say, "I'm Daniel Reed's wife." Maya actually laughed. That's the detail people miss in the video, the little laugh, because the clip everyone shared starts 4 seconds later. She laughed because the sentence was absurd, because Daniel wasn't married, because she had checked. And Hannah, 4 days past her breaking point, running on no sleep and 8 years of stolen recitals, heard that laugh as mockery. The photo hit the pavement. Her hand caught Maya across the face hard enough to turn her head, and then Hannah was screaming. 8 years, 2 children, saying Lily's name, saying Cole's name, while Maya stood frozen with her coffee spreading across the concrete and 200 phones rising like periscopes behind the lobby glass. Security separated them in 90 seconds. The video was online in 4 minutes. And the internet, which loves a villain the way fire loves paper, chose its villain by lunchtime. The clip had everything except context. A sobbing wife, a well-dressed city woman, a slap. The caption written by a stranger said, "Wife confronts the mistress who destroyed her family," and that became the truth for 1 million people. Then 3 million, then her company's HR department, which suspended Maya by end of day pending review because the tower's name was visible in the shot, and the shot was everywhere. Now, here's where this story becomes the story I actually wanted to tell you. Because that night, 2 women sat in 2 different rooms in 2 different cities, wrecked, humiliated, each believing the other had ruined her life. And one of them picked up the phone. It was Hannah. In the hours after the confrontation, scrolling the wreckage, she had watched the internet do to Maya what it does: the address hunting, the death threats, the calls to get her fired, and something about the scale of it sat wrong in her stomach. Because Hannah had now seen all of Maya's photos, 2 years of them, and a woman hiding an affair does not post anniversary tributes with location tags. A mistress does not introduce the man to her mother at Thanksgiving publicly, smiling, tagged. Either Maya Torres was the most brazen liar alive, or she was something else. So Hannah sent one message, not an apology, a question. Did you know? They met 2 days later in a diner off the interstate, halfway between their two cities, which is its own kind of poetry. Two women who had spent that week as each other's monsters, sliding into the same booth. And for the first 10 minutes, nobody spoke. Because what is there to say? Then Maya took out her phone and slid it across the table and said, "This is everything. Ask me anything." And Hannah took out a folder, an actual folder, because she was a teacher and teachers make folders even for the apocalypse, and said, "Then you should see what he told me." What happened in that diner over the next 4 hours is the real climax of this story. And there wasn't a single raised voice. They rebuilt him, side by side, receipt by receipt. They laid the two lives against each other and watched a third man emerge that neither of them had ever met. The sick mother in Maya's version was healthy, hosted Sunday dinners, and adored her daughter-in-law, Hannah. The corporate crash pad in Hannah's version was Maya's apartment, where he kept half a closet. Mike HV, a C, was the code he used for Hannah's texts. The work burner was the phone he ran his marriage on. He had used Lily's crayon drawing, his own daughter's drawing, as a prop in his niece story. And that was the moment Hannah had to leave the table for a while. The school fees text, the cash gas, the deleted profiles, every locked door in one woman's version had a key sitting in plain sight in the other's. Two smart, careful women, and it had taken both of their information combined to see one whole man. That's not a coincidence. That was his design. He hadn't lied to each of them. He had engineered them as firewalls against each other. And then Maya found the thing that turned two heartbroken women into something else entirely. Cross-checking dates on her banking app, she noticed that the $11,000 she had lent Daniel the previous spring for his mother's home care, sent to a care agency account he'd given her, had gone to an account whose transfer nickname was 3 letters. D.R.J. Daniel Reed Jr. wasn't his name. But Daniel had, Hannah confirmed with her stomach dropping, recently opened a college fund. And a search of that account trail, which lawyers would later finish, showed deposits from 2 more sources neither woman recognized. Not 2 lives. The man was running at least 3, and one of the other sources was a 62-year-old widow downstate who thought Daniel was her financial advisor. He wasn't just a cheater. Cheating was the smallest thing he did. And the 2 women he'd counted on to tear each other apart in front of an office tower were now sitting in a diner booth with 4 hours of documents between them. And Hannah looked up from the table and said the sentence that ends this chapter. He's coming home Friday. Let's make sure everything is ready for him. They didn't ambush him with screaming. They'd both been in that video. And they'd learned what public rage buys you, which is nothing. They did it the boring way, the way that works. A lawyer for Hannah, a fraud attorney for Maya, statements from the widow who wept with relief when they contacted her because she'd suspected for a year and thought she was going crazy. On Friday night, Daniel walked into his kitchen downstate, and there were no candles and no shouting, just Hannah at the table with a folder, telling him calmly that the kids were at her mother's, that Maya sent her regards, and that everything in the folder was already with attorneys, so he should sit down. People always ask what he said, and the honest answer is nothing worth repeating. Men like Daniel are dazzling right up until the moment 2 versions of their story are in the same room, and then they're just tired, middle-aged men doing arithmetic about sentencing. He tried charm on Hannah, then blame on Maya, then tears on both, cycling through his tools like a locksmith at a door that had been changed. The divorce took 8 months, the fraud case took 18, and it ended with restitution, probation, and a felony record. Because the widow's money made it a crime, not just a heartbreak. His company, the same one that suspended Maya within 6 hours of a context-free video, took 4 months to quietly part ways with him. Sit with that difference for a second. Maya got her job back with an apology she described as legally supervised. She didn't stay. She works somewhere else now, somewhere she chose. And it took her a long time, real-time therapy time, to stop auditing herself for the crime of having been deceived. Because that's the cruelest part of a lie this size. Long after everyone knows the truth, the person who was fooled keeps standing trial in their own head. And Hannah and Maya, the wife and the woman in the green coat, whose worst moments together live forever on the internet. They're not best friends. Life isn't a movie. But every year, on the anniversary of that diner, one of them texts the other, just checking in, and the other one answers. So, what do you take from this story? I'll give you 3 things. And the first one is for anyone who watched that slap video or any video like it and picked a villain in 4 seconds. You were given a frame, not a story. The most viral moment of these 2 women's lives contained the least truth about either of them. Remember that the next time the internet hands you someone to hate before lunch. The second is about the locked door. Maya had rules and Daniel beat every one of them except the last. And the last rule is this. It's not about whether someone has an explanation. Liars always have explanations, delivered smoothly, in advance. It's about whether your life and their life can actually touch. 2 years, and she had never once stood inside his hometown, his weekend, his other 72 hours. When someone builds a room you can never enter and decorates the door with something noble, a sick mother, a difficult past, a demanding job, you are allowed to knock anyway. Love that can't survive your knocking was never load-bearing. And the third is the one I care about most. The most powerful thing in this entire story wasn't the slap, and it wasn't the folder, and it wasn't the felony. It was one text message from one exhausted woman to the stranger she'd hit that morning. Did you know? 3 words that chose truth over the comfort of an easy enemy. Daniel's entire architecture, 3 lives, years of engineering, was built on one single assumption, that the women would never talk to each other. Every liar's kingdom has that same foundation. And it takes exactly one honest question to bring the whole thing down. If this story got under your skin, hit the like button, because it tells me you want more stories like this one. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week I'm telling the story of a woman who discovered her identity had been stolen by someone at her own wedding, and it took her 9 years to figure out which guest it was. And I want to know something from you, down in the comments. If you were Hannah, would you have sent that text to Maya, or could you never have forgiven her, even knowing she was innocent? Be honest, because last week's comment section changed my mind about something, and I read every single one. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next story.